Hello everyone, and welcome to this new episode in our conceptual design series of webcasts. Today we're going to be talking about conceptual BIM with Revit. My name is Robert Adam. I am a program manager with the Autodesk Customer Success Organization, and our special guest speaker today is Kyle Davis, an application engineer with the CAD Technology Center, one of our partners. The webinar today will be talking about format overview, a format to Revit, Revit to format, and then at the end, we will give you some additional resources where you can learn more. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you that the lines are muted to ensure the best audio quality. If you want to ask a question or comment on the content that Kyle will be presenting, please use the raise your hand button or type your question in the Q&A panel, and we will answer your question at the end. We'll have a question period at the end. Also important, this webinar is being recorded and our recording will be available on our Enterprise Hub. All of our webinars are recorded and are posted there for on-demand access. Also, everybody who has registered to this webinar will receive an email in about 48 hours with a link to the recording so that you can share with your colleagues. That being said, I will pass it over to Kyle.
Thanks, Robert.
My pleasure. I will stop sharing so you can share your screen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Davis, like an introduction, and I'm an application engineer here at CAD Technology Center. And getting ready for this webinar, we're going to be using the format to Revit and kind of some of the features to be able to go back and forth between the two options of designing in format and then going into Revit to do some documentation, and also show later how to push that back into format. So the first thing we're going to start off with is just kind of giving a brief overview of format. If you haven't seen some of the other previous ones, we're just going to kind of go through some of the steps to create some elements within format. And within format, it's a very simple program to be able to sketch out a design that you're looking for. If you wanted to kind of just draw something up and sketch it out, this is a great software to be able to control some of those things that create your masses and your shapes that you're looking for, and then be able to design some things there to then be able to push to other software such as Revit. So let's go ahead and get into Revit or format here. And just some of the base things, just again, of the overview, we do have some of the first things I want to definitely like to talk about with going into Revit would be to create the levels within format to be able to control kind of where I want my levels to be. And then when we push this into Revit, this will be pretty handy as well. So I'm just going to create a couple of levels in here to show, and I can double click on these to give them a name. So here, just level 1 and level 2. And when I start to draw my elements, I will be able to use these levels to assign them to an object, and then be able to, when that gets pushed into Revit, we'll see the levels there. So I'm going to start off with just sketching some objects. So I'm going to use the sketch tool. And we have all the different options of just doing lines or arcs or the rectangle. I'm just going to draw a quick floor here. So I'm going to snap to a grid, which I can go turn the settings on to snap to a grid. And now I can snap right to actually the intersection here of this. And I'm just going to draw a line and tab to change my measurement. And then I could tab again to do the width. So I created a rectangle, and then now I'm just going to grab the face and extrude it up. I'm going to extrude it up 1 foot to make a floor. And if I double click, and I'm going to go ahead and create a group out of this, it's to be able to control things within format and then also within Revit. It's very handy if you group the objects. So I group the floor, so I double clicked on it to grab all the faces, right click and say group, and then this makes the floor a group that when I bring this into Revit, it's going to be important with the mass here of the floor. And I'm going to create another floor up a little higher. So I'm going to grab this, and as I pull up, I can snap to the Z direction, and then tap Control to then be able to create a copy of it. So I'm going to tab and make this 16 feet. So I can just create these different sketches, and then I'm going to create some other objects in here. Let's create some like wall type of scenario. So I can come in here and draw another rectangle over top. And sometimes when I do this, I have the group here, and then I have that face in here. So what's really nice is that in Format, what I would want to do, oh, I just realized I was under layers. I meant to create levels. I can reassign those. So I'm going to create 2 levels. And then this one's going to be 16 feet here for the elevation. For layers, this is also important because this is where I can assign an object to a particular layer. So I'm going to call this one floor 1, floor 2. I'm going to create a couple in here also for my walls. And then I'm going to assign the group here. So if I select this group, go to the properties, I'm going to assign it to that layer, floor 1. And then I'm going to assign this one to floor 2. And now if I go back to the layers, I could turn off that group entirely. So if I turn off the floor, all I see is this rectangle here. And then I'm going to offset the face. So right click, offset face. I'm going to push it out. Going to be 4 inches to create my wall shape here. And then I can extrude these as like walls here. And I'm going to turn my floor back on so I can see my floor. So I'm just creating these shapes to be able to design what I'm looking for. I can create all different kinds of objects within this model, sketch it out, anything that you choose. And so I want to open up a sample file that I worked on. And in this sample file, I have the floors that sketch floors, and then I have the sketch of the roof and some other objects in here, and then also created some columns. So I sketched the column to be able to control that. Now, once a group is created or a column, what's also important when we get to the Revit portion to be able to kind of document this is the properties of this. We get to choose what type of element it is. If I double click on this group to go, I classified it as a generic model. This group here is going to be, once it gets brought into Revit, it's going to be that particular category. So you want to put the category of this object to whatever fits that particular object. So in the case of the floor, it's going to be a mass. And then the columns, I did just generic model. And then I have these furniture over here where I have, let me hide the curtain walls here. So I'm going to hide the glass wall so I can select this. And if I go into this one, there's a warning. I created this within Revit, so there's a feature I'll talk about there. But I classified the category here as a furniture. So as I sketch this out, I'm just drawing all the different shapes and extruding them, and be able to control the options of grouping. Oh, I'm inside an object, so my zoom is not working the greatest. There we go. Once I'm outside, the zoom is much better. So with the creation of these objects, you're just sketching this out. And we can talk about the sketch a little bit later when I bring it back in from Revit. We also, again, have the additional resources if you wanted to see a little bit more on this. But what's nice about it is, again, once I have this set, I could save the sketch, and I could save to two options. I could save to an A360 drive, or I can save locally to my network or my C drive, wherever you want to do. What's nice about the save is with the workflow I'm going to talk about now with getting into Revit, you just simply have to save the SketchUp or the format file within that sketch here. So the sketch is an AXM, so that's a format file. And once that has been saved, then we can bring this into Revit. So with the Revit portion of this, we can, what you will need to do is you'll first need to install the format converter add-in within Revit. This will install a little utility in your add-ins tab. So when you install the add-in, you'll have the add-ins tab, and you'll have the panel for format, where you'll have a couple of options on a drop down what you can do within Revit. So let's get into Revit, and I will show I'm just going to start a blank project, and I'm going to bring that file into Revit to show what it does. So I have a blank project, and I'm going to start off with removing some of the levels in here, because what the format will go ahead and take care of some of that for me. So I'm just going to delete level 2, and I'm going to start off with just a single level. So I'm going to jump to the add-ins tab, and then there's the arrow here, and we have a couple of options that we can use for this. There is the option of convert RFA to format. What's really nice about this ability is if you have a workflow between Revit and format, and you need those content within format, that's the benefit of this, is that you can path to your content and convert it to a format file. And here I got only families of the following categories will be converted. So masses, casework, entourage, furniture, furniture system, generic models, parking, site, and specialty equipment will be converted. So those are the categories that you can then insert into format to be able to place those objects in the format model. And then here, this is where the content will be uploaded or pushed to when you do it, so you can browse to a folder you want it to push to. And then it will run through and convert those for you. And then once those are converted in format, back in format here, I go to the content button and be able to add a path to that content. So I go to content library, and then I can add a path of where I've exported those content. So I already have a path in here. I'm going to remove that one, but I have a path to my content. And then when I come up to the drop down and I say content, here is a list of all the content that I have. So I can go into those folders, and I have beds and those sort of things that now I can just click on and place within the format model. Let's go grab a table in here, and I'm going to grab this table. I'm going to put it over here in this area. Let's add some trees in here too. So now I got a tree within the SketchUp model, or the format model here, that I can sketch out. So with this benefit here, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save this and bring this into Revit now. So once I have that modeled, then I can go to the Revit and go to the import format to Revit. And I'm going to bring this file in, and it's going to grab all those objects that are in format and insert them into Revit. And you will actually now be able to use these to create the Revit model. And it also brings in those objects such as the levels that I generated. It'll bring those in and be able to see those within the Revit model. And then I can create views based on the levels. I can create those objects that need to be the levels. So as this is still processing here, within this slide, you see the levels from the format model, and those are inserted directly from it. So it does take a little bit of time depending on what is in that model and how much elements. I did put some of the trees in there, so that takes a little bit of extra processing to bring that in. But once it's in there, we'll be able to see all that information from the format model. Now, once the format model is in here, all these objects, that the floors, the walls, they will be masses within Revit. So they'll be using the massing and site tab, and will show the options to be able to turn those masses on, and then also be able to place objects based on those masses, and also look at the columns to show that we can change those elements and category to, if we need to schedule it for any reason, we can schedule those columns based on actual columns, because currently they will be generic models, but we can switch that over. So my model is still processing here. But again, in Revit, or in the format model, these are been classified as a column, but they're a generic model within the format model. So again, I have to convert those. And the same with the furniture. They will actually be furniture as long as I've told them to be furniture. So here, this is a furniture element. So when in Revit, it will be a furniture category as well. So it's almost finished processing here. Again, I added those extra things, so it takes a little bit that processing there. I could have turned off additional stuff in here to save a little bit of time to bring that in. So I could turn off the plan image, the trees, even the satellite image. If I don't want that to come in, that is actually turned. That is turned off actually by default. When I bring that in, it didn't bring that model in. So well, I was going to have to wait here for this, or I can go ahead and just close Revit and reopen to it looks like this particular model is not going to work. So let me go into the format. I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff in here to then be able to bring that into Revit a little bit easier. So let's save. I'm just going to go in Revit and reopen here. Make sure I have this saved here. So save sketch locally. There we go. Okay, so let's go in and import. So now that I saved it as a smaller one, hopefully here it doesn't take as long to process. Let me go ahead and just end that other Revit. There we go. So this is just taking a little extra time. Don't know if there's some of the with the webcast is kind of taking a little bit more processing there. But once it's in Revit, since they are masses, you'll be able to use the massing tools to be able to place a floor on the mass. So this is a floor within the Revit model. This will be a mass. So I can do mass floors to create the floor within Revit. The roof, same thing with the roof by face, to be able to place it on the mass, and then also the walls. Be able to use regular walls or curtain walls by face and place them on the face of the mass there. And then the columns will actually be generic models families. So if I select that and up on the ribbon of Revit, when I say edit family, I can go into that and then go to the switch category to be able to switch that to a column category so that Revit knows that it's a column. So if I go to schedule it, it's going to show up as a column in the schedule. So let's see how Revit's doing here. I do apologize. It seems like this just taking a little bit extra long time, but once it's in Revit and you create all those objects, you can now actually dimension those and create those objects to be able to dimension, put the documentations, tagging, rooms. So you can do all that within Revit after the model has been placed to create all those windows and doors and windows or the walls. All that can be in there. And then once you have that, you save the Revit model, so now you have that documentation there. And then once we need to go from format to Revit, the option here is you actually would need to export the Revit model to a ACIS or a SAT file. You export that model out, and then in format, you can then import that file to format so that you can see the Revit model, so you get all the walls in there. You would want to be in a 3D view that sees everything that you want to be able to export. So go into visibility graphics and start turning off the objects you don't want in format. Export that out to SAT file. When you import that into format, it brings all those objects with it. Then you can start modifying in format, creating the sketch you want there, save the format, and then be able to bring that back into Revit. It won't update the Revit model based on the changes you made in format, but at least you have an option to be able to get that out to format if someone not inside Revit wants to make a quick update. You can then bring that back into Revit to make those updates if you need to. So again, just making sure you turn off what you don't want within format. So all those extra stuff in model, because if it can be a large model, you might want to export a few categories at a time, or even a single category. If it's a really large model, if it's a basic simple model, you might be able to export multiple things. But just to kind of keep it a little bit smaller for the format size, it's format can handle it, but it would be easier just to import those as the separate files, so it can handle at least importing wise. Okay, so here I got my finally get the format model in there. Again, I apologize, it took a little bit there, just the processing of all that's going on the computer here. But now I'm going to go to a 3D view, and you'll see the layers or the levels that came in, and I got my levels from Revit itself. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of those because I want just the ones from Format. Now, currently I only see some of the stuff. That's because I have the show massing turned off, so I need to turn that on. And now I will see the model here from Format with all the elements. So if I select this, it's actually a furniture, the category furniture. This is a generic model, but I'm going to go into the family and I'm going to switch its category to a column. So now this is classified as a structural column. So now I'll be able to actually schedule that. Same thing with stairs. They are mass within the Format. So when I bring that in, I can trace over those with the Revit objects. And I could also, again, do the mass floor. Pick my mass, create floor. Now currently the way I had it in this Format model is the floor went up from the level, whereas Revit's floor goes from the level down. So I'm going to offset this up 1 foot to get it where I want it. Oh, my numlock's turned off. Let me turn that on. So I export it up 1 foot, or raise it up 1 foot so I get my floor in there. And again, my wall by faces to get my curtain wall on there. So now I have a Revit curtain wall and my mass there. So let's turn off the mass. And you can see my curtain wall here. Now I picked the other one, so let me pick the storefront here just to get the other mullions, if I had mullions in here. So I got the grids, but the mullions weren't placed, but I could place those in there. So now when I have this all set up, I can now create views based on those levels that I have. So I'm going to create a floor plan view from the Format model. So there's floor 1. And now that I've created a floor and the curtain walls and the generic model, I'm going to actually be able to document this by putting my dimensions for widths. I can document it, putting schedules. Since I've done walls, I could put rooms. You know, must have a gap in here. Yep, there's my gap. So I could put those objects, the Revit objects, and start documenting this just as a regular Revit model. Scheduling, everything is Revit now, so I can do all the normal Revit functionalities to get my Revit documentation there, and then be able to work with a Format model to update it. Okay, so that would be the Format to Revit and Revit to Format to Revit and Revit to Format. And we can hand it back over to Robert to finish up here.
All right, thank you so much, Kyle. If you can unshare your screen, I'll share mine for the next few slides. All right, so a few links and resources that might help you get more information on this. So we have the Format blog there. We have the forums on our Autodesk user forums where you can talk to other users of Format and ask questions and get input and knowledge from them. We have a pretty good playlist of Format related content on YouTube. And then obviously, if you want to find out what's new in the latest release of Format, there's the release notes link right there. We will include all of these in the follow-up email that we're going to send you after this webinar, so that you don't have to screenshot this. As I said, the webinar has been recorded, is being recorded right now, and we will post it on our Enterprise Hub. The Enterprise Hub is where we host a lot of content. We have articles, we have a calendar of upcoming events such as this one. We have a pretty large library of recorded webcasts for on-demand consumption. And you can also access the Autodesk forums from there as well. So I highly recommend you visit the Enterprise Hub, and if you're interested in keeping up to date with more webinars like this. That being said, I am gonna pass the screen share back over to Kyle, and we're gonna look through the questions that were posted in the Q&A and in the chat window, and give you guys some answers. Kyle, I'll let you share your screen, and I'll take a look at what questions we've had so far. All right, so one question that we have for you, Kyle, is how do you bring in a sloped topography of the site from a Civil 3D file or from Google Earth?
In that question of is it into Format? So within Format, there's only a few. I mean, you can come in here and create a model being able to tell it where it's located. I'm not sure if you could bring in, here I could import a 3D model, but it would have to be one of these objects here, like a DWG. So you can bring in your DWG if it is a Civil file. I think you would have to export to AutoCAD from Civil, so that it's just an AutoCAD-based DWG instead of a Civil-based DWG. I know Revit prefers an exported DWG as well, so Format would be pretty similar, so that when you transfer these back and forth, you have that there. But within Revit, it is just simply exporting AutoCAD DWG and then import that into Revit, and then you can create a topography based on that. But as far as in Format, it's just simply bringing that DWG or creating a satellite image of it, but it doesn't have, the satellite is just a flat image.
All right, John, does that answer a question? If you want, I can unmute you if you want to add more thoughts or ask more questions. All right, in the meantime, we have another question from John as well. How much time does Format save on a project on average?
Well, that one does, I would say, varies quite a bit, because you can, depending on what you're trying to do for a particular project, if I'm just trying to sketch up a model really quickly and I don't want to really necessarily go into Revit to do that, we have some users that won't go into Revit because they don't know Revit yet. So creating a Format model at the very beginning of a project, quickly sketching it up and maybe right in front of someone or during a client meeting, you could sketch it up. So I could see it saving some time there without having to have someone draw something up in Revit and then send it over to do a meeting. And then maybe the person giving the meeting, again, doesn't know Revit, so they won't be able to understand the Revit concept, but they can be able to come into Format and sketch it up. So that could save some time there. Because then you could do it live within the client meeting. So it could save, 30 minutes or an hour just easily just sketching it up.
All right, thank you for that. So that actually, I think, also covers Benjamin Downey's question, which was, why would anyone start with Format instead of using Revit masses and in-place models for conceptual design? Benjamin, was Kyle's answer good for you as well? If you want to ask more questions, you can just raise your hand and I'll unmute you. John would like some more on the timeline savings.
Well, I would say I'd have to look into a little bit more to see exactly time-wise. Just sketching up this model here. If I don't know Revit, I sketched this up here. This didn't take me very long. I would say about 15 minutes or so, just to quickly sketch this up and place the content in here. So I'm saving, if I don't, again, not knowing other softwares, and I just wanted to, again, just do this quick sketch up of a model and push it in there. It could save some time having the user not in Revit. That could save, an hour of having to go to maybe a Revit user to be able to draw that up, when someone can go into Format and draw it there, send it to someone in Revit, and they could place those objects in Revit based on the Format model. Just relaying that information, I could say it could save a couple hours just kind of translating that information from either a hand drawing over to someone, because having a hand sketch and then someone drawing that in Revit could take some time because they're having to read the measurements from the sketch. When you have a Foreman model creates the masses for them, they could place it on the mass. So that could save 5 minutes to 10 minutes per element. So you can get it, 30 minutes to an hour pretty easily.
All right, thank you for that. We have a question from, sorry.
I was gonna say, I see the part about the percentage-wise. Again, percentage of it, I could say you could be saving 50%, again, to have that person not know Revit, can save the person that then when you give it to Revit, that could save about 50% of the time right there, 25 to 50% pretty easily with having a pre-built model.
All right. Can multiple users work on the same format model? Asks Tom.
That is the one where you can do within the Pro version, you can actually start a collaboration session, and then you could be able to have someone come in here and then they could join the session there and be able to start a collaboration. So yes, you can share between multiple users, but if you're not doing like a session, then it would be like a single user file. Saving locally or A360 to be able to work on it there. But if you start that session, you have multiple users within it.
All right. Tom, does that answer your question? In the meantime, we have one. Tom says yes. Thank you. In the meantime, we have one from Gary. Can you export format to robot or vice versa?
I'm not sure on the robot one, but I know that the export here, these are the formats that you can export to. So if those objects, those models accept these other ones, this is what you can export to.
All right, thank you for that. And on the same vein, we have two SketchUp questions. So one of them is from Jabel is it possible to import SketchUp files in here? And what is the best thing to use to convert the SketchUp as a family example for a furniture?
Actually, good question. Within Revit itself, within the add-in, there actually is an option to convert SketchUp to format. So if you import that SketchUp model into Revit and then use the convert SketchUp to format, that will then bring that SketchUp basically to make it a format model. If you have a family, that would be the same thing of converting that SketchUp to a format there, and then you can convert that over to format.
All right, and then another SketchUp related question, what benefits does format have over SketchUp?
They're very similar to one another. The benefits of sketching that out, being able to do those same things like watching how SketchUp works compared to format is very similar. The benefit I liked with the format over SketchUp is just kind of where things are located. I like some of the menus of format much easier. Like when I draw a rectangle, I get the measurement on my screen. When working with SketchUp, I couldn't look on the screen. I always had to look in the lower right corner or somewhere else that wasn't very obvious. And then if I want to change measurements within format, I could hit tab and change a measurement. It's pretty simple. Also, a lot of the right-click menu, you can right-click on things. I found this just to be much easier to use than some of the just menus within SketchUp.